Ah,
We are live.
we are live. Hello.
Hello, welcome everyone to another late night edition of Fear and Loathing in the Windy City. I'm your host, Jose Raquena. I'm joined today again with Ali Alexandra.
Hello. Hello. How's it going?
Doing good. Just kind of living my quarantine life. Not doing much. You said you want to do this episode. You mentioned that I've neglected some hard-hitting Chicago journalism, podcasting, what have you. Rod Blagojevich.
He's back. He's back.
Back. Right.
Yes. So for anybody watching, I would like to some other time go into like a more of a deep dive of like who Madigan really is and Blogo. Why not? Because he was governor back, in 2012, he was arrested for basically, tell me if I'm wrong, because he was essentially selling Obama's Senate seat. Well, right?
Yeah, that was a couple of things that he was doing. I know that he was also trying to shake down the Children's Charity Foundation for
Yeah. So he basically, what we're going to talk about today is Blagojevich as far as his take on Mike Madigan. So the last episode we were talking a lot about Michael Madigan, and I know like Mona, for example, she doesn't know really much about Madigan. So like I said, another time I'll get into him. But essentially, he's the classic Chicago machine politician. He stays behind the shadows, but the point is nothing gets on the floor in Springfield without Madigan approving it. He's the speaker of the House there. He's the chair of the Democrat Party in Illinois. They've got a whole machine going. So basically, just really briefly, I'll start out with kind of how Blogo, we'll call him Blogo, just it's easier. Blagojevich, Blogo, basically, he's got a podcast now. So really, who's better to tell anybody about how the machine works than Blogo? So he was pardoned. My interest was piqued in Blagojevich back when Trump pardoned him, because I just thought that was really random, honestly. I thought maybe it was going to serve a purpose, like more for Trump, but
part of the plan.
Right.
Part of the 4D chess move.
Part of the plan. It's part of the plan.
In the corner, he's the Queen's Gambit.
He will actually be bringing JFK Jr. out for everybody to see at the end of all this. So get ready. Just kidding. But yeah, so basically, Trump pardoned him. He gets out, and then he just kind of goes on, just going on like a media spree. Really, I think there's a Netflix documentary about him, I believe. All kinds of fun stuff. But you really almost can't hate him because he's so blunt and honest at this point. For an Illinois politician, no offense. He's just very open about who Madigan is and how this works. And he really thinks that Madigan's days are numbered. The other day I was skeptical, but after the recent events of the last couple of days, basically Durbin's like coming out against him. Even Lightfoot was asked today. Now, she won't go as far to say that he should resign. Like a lot of these politicians will say like almost, or like, well, he should, at least answer the questions, but they won't go all the way. But the 4 people that are around Madigan right now all been indicted, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But just the last thing I'll say before we talk a little more about this is that basically Madigan allowed this piece of legislation from ComEd to pass that ultimately, which is still affecting us, raised ComEd's prices on all of us like 30%. So that essentially implies that Madigan was in on this. So pretty much it was just patronage, like trading jobs for different things in legislation. So we can get into that more later on, but that's just kind of intro. If you want to add anything, Jose?
No, I think you nailed it. I did mention the Children's Hospital thing because, like we mentioned, a lot of people pro-clutch about Blago, but I remember him, his pleas on the House floor. I was a weird kid that read the newspaper back when all that stuff was going on. But like, his point was they give people political contributions all the time, and they were asking for something, and it was, like you said, his fault is speaking so bluntly and candidly about how Illinois politics actually works.
Exactly.
And then, they're like, wow, that's a crime. And then he's like, wait a minute. And then we have a whole investigation into Madigan now. So he's definitely, his. I heard his Madigan analysis podcast, and then I heard his Thanksgiving one. It is kind of fun to hear him talk again. You forget that's how a lot of Chicagoans like to talk their politics out, and DC might laugh at it and yell at it or call it or say this, but it's like, that's how people talk around here. I don't know.
It's just so open and honest, and I really found, because again, I keep going back to this point. Like, he doesn't really have anything at this point to lose. He's not like he's loyal really to any of these politicians now, because I mean, he was the sacrificial lamb. There's something interesting about Madigan Madigan and Blogo, because basically Blogo married into a machine Democrat family. Patty is his wife's name. I don't remember her father's name, but he was the one that got Blogo in. So I thought there was a description. It might have been on a different episode, because there are a couple episodes about Madigan. But Blogo said the first time he ever met Madigan, he just remembers him like cold winter, was wearing that derby hat that Madigan always wears, just like classic Chicago. And so pretty much, they worked together for years, but eventually Blogo became a thorn in Madigan's side because of different tax issues that would go on. Now Blogo says that he was, of course, always working for the people of Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate that very much, of course. So he had various things passed that he would veto, but he was becoming a problem. I think at one point, Dick Durbin was asked, are you going to intervene? And he made a joke like he'd rather do, I think, like anything else than try to even get in the middle of that fight. And so there were actually, which I can talk about on another episode, there was like 15 pages apparently back right before Blogo was impeached. It was a 15-page memo from Madigan's office on like different talking points for people to use about Blogo. So it was never confirmed, but it does kind of seem like Madigan had a hand in making sure that Blogo was gone. So it's I really think that Illinois is like a microcosm of a lot of the political fights going on in the country right now, because and before we go back to that podcast episode, another reason my interest was piqued is because the Republican leader, Jim Durkin, is now eyeing for the speaker's position. And which is even weirder, he said that he's going to go after try to appeal to the 15 Democrats that are he needs to get that position. I mean, so by doing that, he's effectively infuriated the entire Illinois GOP base, because they are wanting Durkin and other Republicans to be focused on Georgia, to keep this all. Did you know what's going on with that? I don't know if anybody heard.
The Republican Party's not long for this world, and all the smart people that knows what's up are getting their piece before the pie falls apart.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Like, so a lot, and there's just like conservatives, like kind of like the new right. They're already done with the establishment GOP, and they're not really like the MAGA type. But then you also have the MAGA type who's infuriated, and then just like the rhinos, which is like a Jim Durkin. So I don't really know why he would publicly say that. And it's just funny because like a week ago he was on some like WGN, and he was like, no, I have no interest in getting that. It's just like they're all the same. But I'm just very curious at where that's going to go, because I've never heard, especially in Illinois, politicians at least in that position say that they wanted to work with reform-minded Democrats, when the Democrats that are going against Madigan are not machine establishment Democrats. So it's just very interesting to see all the splits that are happening. But I really think that Madigan's days are numbered, because the fact that this many people, like politicians like Pritzker, Durbin, Lightfoot, et cetera, are all saying this, like going a little farther with it, that tells me something. And the Democrat caucus leader of Illinois actually came out yesterday and said that she was not going to support him either. So Blagojevich just keeps saying that, he still thinks that like, there might be a chance, But I don't know. I'm curious what you think, like after just listening to his podcast on the issue.
Well, I have to be completely fair to Blago here. I completely disagree with what he thinks is what's going on with Trump in the election right now.
Yeah.
So I kind of take the rest of his other analysis with the same grain of salt. I mean, but if there's someone that has a ton of insight into the ramifications of all those people turning on Madigan, and I definitely, I'm not dismissing him. Like, oh, Blago doesn't know what he's talking about. Even his analysis on what's happening with Trump, I think, is a little bit, thoughtful. But I disagree that, he's rooting for Trump. Obviously, Trump pardoned him. You're going to be grateful to the guy who freed you.
Correct.
But, so that on that alone, we have a bit of a disagreement. But his overall take that, the more that these things come out clean, the better that the transition will be. I think that line ultimately, he's holding on to reality there. And with that, his take on Madigan is that ComEd and basically is really been the bodyguard to Madigan. And that, Madigan had his clique, which were all these figures, but his power came from how well he worked a powerful entity like ComEd and other entities like that. And the fact that ComEd, being the primary entity that empowered him, being the number one turning on him, and now his inner circle turning on him, his analysis that could be, the writings on the wall, the chessboard's clear, made in 4, 3, 2, whatever.
I don't know.
I think that, I think he's definitely, he's reading the tea leaves with a lot of insight.
And another thing about that Blogo was saying, because I agree, I don't really, Trump pardoned him, so we get it. I'm sure I would have some, I don't know. I mean,
I hate Trump. I want to pardon Trump.
I don't really agree with it. I don't know. I don't agree with that analysis. I kind of think Trump's done, but if it gives people hope, then so be it. Yeah. But other than that, what I really just find the most interesting about Blogo is that the way that he describes his relationship with Madigan and just the way that Madigan has his hands in everything. And no one really knows. I mean, people know, but outside of Illinois, people don't really know. Like, it's fascinating to me in Illinois how corrupt it is and just the machine. And it's like, I feel like if it were going on in California or New York, I just feel like it would be covered more. But another thing about the Chicago, mainstream press corps, there's some good journalists in there. I'm not
there are
tons of them, but generally,
becoming young ones too.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's nice to see like offshoots of people coming from the very mainstream and like doing their own thing. That's always good. But for the most part, you aren't going to be asked back or allowed back in if you go too far with your questions. So that was just another reason why hearing Blago's take on things is interesting, because he's answering a lot of the questions that you really wouldn't otherwise have answers to. I mean, and there's like, I just watched the other day, it was some clip from, I think it was WGN. They won't even really say Madigan's name. I mean, when I moved to Illinois, honestly, I'd never heard of Madigan. And then everyone's like, oh, you got to find out. I was like, who is this Madigan guy? It's just a shadowy figure. And we haven't even gotten into Burke yet. And I'm not understanding, and I will figure it out, I hope, as I research. But with this, it's like never ending. Burke and Madigan, they've got so many, like, I don't know how Burke is not behind bars. I mean,
because he controls who goes behind bars.
That's very true. It's insane. Like, it's just
controls this entire network. It's not just Burke. It's all the judges he's helped appointed and all their families, all the cops who have 24 hours surveilled him and his families and their families, all of the fraternal order of police that he gets and fights for their unions and their rights and their banks and their properties. This guy's, he's what Mitch McConnell is. Honestly, that's really what it comes down to between Burke and Madigan. It's a pissing contest over who's really been in charge this whole time. And Burke's like, well, I control the cops. Yeah. And I'm a leader of the Democratic Party in the city, and the Republican Party loves me. So I'm going to survive this, Madigan.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I would guess that he's the star witness to ComEd because of his connection to Marty Sandoval, which is why I would love if Blago would talk a little bit about Burke and what he knows a little bit about him.
Me too. I would love to hear more about like his relationship with Burke and what he knows. I want to pick the man's brain, frankly. I'll just bluntly say it because like I said, he doesn't have anything to lose. And I'll give him this. And it's kind of interesting. He was talking about Madigan and just all that's going on. And he said, I think he should resign as speaker. He shouldn't, he came after me. I don't want him to go to jail though. And I was like, okay, that's nice. At least he doesn't want him to go. He said it's almost in a way he feels bad for him. I'm not going to go that far, but I mean, I'm going to admit this. Yeah, like I think it's just really hard to comprehend all of the things that Madigan is responsible for and what he's had his hand in because he is so shadowy. I mean, you want to talk like deep state, like that's come to Illinois and show you deep state. I mean, I just, I've been thinking more too about what we talked about the last episode about Shuey Garcia and what he's going to do. And so, the more I've been reading about it, he's going to be the one. I don't know. That's another one because he's been silent, and a lot of other people in his group have been silent. Like I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he'll do it. I read an article. There was about like the Black Caucus in Illinois State, and they've been silent about Madigan too. So that's I think the only thing that Madigan's got, and the last bargaining chip that he might have or try to, hopefully work with is the fact that nobody will be appointed speaker if they don't choose him. If somebody else doesn't get, I believe it's 60 votes. So that's why Durkin, the Republicans, going after the 15 Democrats. It's very strange, and I want to research more about that too, because I just feel like if you were like, I mean, obviously we've never been more divided. So for him to go out for like more like progressive candidates and think that, why would they help Durkin?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Well, we might want to dig in and see what Durkin's relationship with Obama is, or his network. Obama used to serve in the White House. He used to serve with all those Republicans. That's why he was going to be Ronald Reagan or whatever. It's kind of like when the country was going through an existential crisis or something. He came to the Illinois State House to talk about unity, and I'm just like, okay, so this is his clan, and and it's a broken one that has it out for each other and has set booby trap bombs for each other in the social, in the pension crisis and the way they handle budgets and their flat tax crap. So Illinois is a mess.
Real
the
mess.
Republican Party, I mean, like the Illinois Republican Party is the weakest state Republican Party.
Oh yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. Yeah, that's what I think of the Republican Party in Illinois. I mean, like in New York, you might as well be a Democrat if you have money. California, the same thing. Seems like that's the way on the coast. The Republican parties run the show across the Midwest and the South. They're strong. They get their real energy from like South Carolina, like cultural politics. It seems like Georgia used to be a bigger influencer. Seems like now it's tilting.
Yeah.
But Chicago, it's always been the Chicago way, which has been more like freshwater politics, which is really more akin to libertarianism at the top. Well, a lot of gangster socialism at the bottom, and just like social understanding,
Yeah, understanding.
It feels like the Republicans in Illinois, the ones that know what's up or have an insight, are just like, you know what? The libertarians are going to be the ones that are going to keep the better base of the Republican Party. We're gonna keep the suburbs. We're gonna keep the cops. We're gonna keep the people that care about like governance, and business and their checkbooks. And the Republican Party, you always need a conservative, reactionary, hearkening back to their old culture and just weird ways. That's probably going to be its future if the Republican Party loses Georgia. The Democrats, my emphasis has been it's better for the left because then the Democrats have a mandate, and we can show how they're failing. Because it seems like the Republicans are just leaning into this messaging of just like the defense the Democrats are going to say. It's like, no, we won Georgia because Donald Trump's an idiot who is a traitor to try to steal the country, and and the Republican Party fell apart, and there is no mandate. We're just all broken up, and we have to wade through a bunch of bullshit to not do anything. But I honestly feel like the Republicans are kind of both testing out to see, Trump's not going to stop doing what he's doing. So let's see what we get out of that. And if that's where it's going to go, the people that plan to survive, in this country for the next 20, 30 years, they're not attaching themselves to anything that's sinking with Trump right now.
Right. But there's something that I'm just, to kind of go into that a bit, what I'm just really interested in, like I was talking about the last episode, as far as like, I love watching, not because I love it, I don't want the country to be fractured. I don't like hypocrites, and sometimes Democrats are kind of hypocrites. So I like, they're real. Come on. Yeah, we all know.
Yeah.
I don't know, being pleasant, showing pleasantries to either party. They're all hip, the establishment they're all the same. So it's interesting to see that. But and a lot of times I do like to kind of play the devil's advocate, and I really do like to kind of keep up what's going on in both sides, just because it's easier to have conversations. It's very easy sometimes to get in an echo chamber. We never want to do that. So really what's going on in the Republican Party, and especially in Illinois, is, okay, so you have all of these Republicans in Congress and the Senate that are, kind of abandoning Trump. But then the base, they're infuriated, and they're saying, well, we're not going to go vote. We're not going to vote. So it will be interesting to see, again, what happens with that, because that's fine. They're trying to save themselves and, not go the way of Trump. But you have, just the following in that like circle, like on Twitter, they're all enraged. They all they're furious. They're furious at rhinos. They're all calling them fake. So it's just like, and then you've got some people that are saying, well, no, this is part of the plan. I'm like, guys, come on. I think that, because again, I go back to like how the centrist Democrats kind of, they use the left, they use progressives as kind of the punching bag, and they're very easy to blame when things go wrong. And then in the Republican Party, definitely in Illinois, the leaders of the Illinois Republican Party have said the same about conservatives and libertarian types. That, yeah, of course, there's some far right wackos in there, but there's also like conservatives that are more just like about small government. The government doesn't need to be involved in everything. They're not necessarily a bunch of MAGA people, but that whole group is now turned off because of, for example, just like things with big tech. Like a lot of Republicans say that they're all about the First Amendment, and that they're there to protect free speech and whatnot, and then they vote the opposite way because, like, say it's their checkbooks. I don't really see much of a difference between centrist Democrats and centrist Republicans. One gets their power, I would say, more through corporations. I would say the other is a little more hungry for power via the government. But it's interesting now, the two are really merging together. They already were, but now it's just like...
Honestly, like the reason why I feel like America was so split was really because the ruling elite was split. And they were pulling their spheres of influences further and further apart. But the truth of it is that Republican voters and the Republican Party is like, what leftists, socialists, communists, the cry of the liberals, the entirety of the Republican Party, what it purports to want to be, fits pretty neatly in that. And that's always been my issue with the Republican Party, is that it purports to be the working person's party because of a shared cultural understanding that works better with the Libertarian Party. If you're a Libertarian that has absolutely no money, but you believe all that stuff, someone from the Koch brothers network would probably treat with you with like some kind of respect of just like, you're one of us, you're going to work your way to be a billionaire one day. And the guy would totally believe it. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Republican Party wants to be. Yeah. The Libertarians already do it better. So like, just let them do it,
Yeah, just let them do it. Right. Like there's the centrist, like, and really, when I think of like the centrist Republican, I really just think of the Illinois Republican Party, like the leaders. Like you had, I think he's now the former Republican chair of the state, Pat Brady. So he's always, he supported one of the most progressive candidates in Illinois, Sean Casten, he backed him. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, just from like a strategic standpoint, why would you back Sean Casten? I don't know too much about Casten other than he ran against Jeannie Ives, which she almost did win governor. Yeah, right. So Pat Brady thinking, for like the centrist mindset, like, well, Trump, he's not going to make it. So like the MAGA thing's over. I'm going to go out on a limb and back Sean Casten. But that obviously was like, okay, the Republican Party's dead in this state, in government at least, because they're essentially, they're one and the same. And in the whole ComEd lawsuit, Jim Durkin, who's going for Madigan's spot, he's mentioned in there too. So he's just trying to avoid that, I feel like. So it's just, I don't know, more people need to pay attention to Illinois politics. But again, I go back to, I go back to the fact that the press in the state really doesn't cover it too far. They'll talk about it, but.
Did you just say that Jim Durkin's also kind of wrapped up in what Madigan is? Like they could sweep. So that's his play. That's his play. He's that. You know what Madigan did when he got on the phone? I thought he was calling Democrats. He was probably calling Jim Durkin and people like him. And she's like, hey, split the party, break your crap, and we'll all save our behinds. Rod Blagojevich knows that what Madigan cares about is gone. He wanted his daughter to be mayor someday. He wanted her political future and that legacy to endure. Blogo and his pot really goes to task about, the ways that some of her lawsuits were really politically expedient to Madigan, which, and then she resigned, not long ago. So like, Blogo, I think that's also why he's being merciful and saying, yeah, he shouldn't see jail time. He's an old man. He's going to be kaput. But I talked about last time, like it looks like Madigan's going for like mobster Harikari, like die on his sword type of deal.
I know.
That'd be a crazy play if he's the one that's doing this. Like, let me show you what the Republican Party in the state really is.
Hey, that's a good point. You're right. It's not like he would just go into this knowing, like he very well knows that Republicans are just as much in on this. I mean, again, all it really just trading jobs for more lenient bills and regulation. That was another thing. And there's more. There's stuff coming out, the same kind of situation with AT&T, with Walgreens.
Yeah.
So, whether or not all of that will affect.
And that's really, like, ComEd is attached to Exxon. They're attached to national security. They have to play ball. They just have to. We are more national security than we are mobsters, and we will work and do our part as part of that apparatus to just demonstrate that.
Yes.
Exactly. AT&T, Walgreens, owned by the Walton family. That Bernie's favorite family. I'm guessing there's where you get your Jim Durkins. Like, hey, we don't need to be embarrassing AT&T and Walgreens and getting them to bend over for the government. They're just,
Yeah. I guess, Durkin said, he was like, well, he's not directly implicated, but he's definitely mentioned in it. Like, come on, man. So that's why I was like, well, that's ironic. And for a strategic, like, I just don't get it. I like, be the devil's advocate. I'm like, why would he go that route based on your base? But again, like, I know, just to kind of tie it all together, like Blago was saying that he also thinks that Madigan's just kind of staying silent and wanting to drag this out because of a Biden presidency. Maybe Madigan thinks that during a Biden presidency, a new attorney would not go for it, would let him off easy. I don't know. That's something I want to research more too, like why that would be the case. And that kind of brings in like Rahm. He comes into the mix. Like they're all friends. Like I really feel like so much stems from Illinois, but it's just never talked about. They bring all that politics to Washington.
We're the fence, between the extremely wealthy Californian power brokers and the extremely wealthy New York, DC, East Coast, like we're talking Florida, South.
Mm-hmm.
You know, South Carolina's not, you know, a punk. Like, it's a lot of money on the coast, a lot of money. And Chicago, #1 transportation hub for money, capital, and drugs. You know, like
And drugs, don't forget the drugs. They
yeah,
come and see the biggest open air drug market. It's
right.
great, you know.
Houston wants to take over that. I don't know. It's kind of a shame we're not going to have a Madigan, you know, moving forward, and Houston's just going to become the new hub.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, I'm sure by, you know, a week from now, who knows what's going to happen. But I am going to try to tap in a little more to some people who are of the kind of exiled conservative group in Illinois, just because I really want to hear their perspective on what Jim Durkin's trying to do, especially with, I just don't see that happening. As much as I think Madigan has done, I also kind of think you never know. He might just have his handlers pull out one more step. Who knows?
I mean, you know, like Madigan is not infallible. Like, you know, he lost his speakership, you know, and then he, you know, had to do stuff to get it back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here. He certainly was not working well with Governor Ryan, and then Governor Ryan ended up in jail, and there was a lot of like covering up for other people not to go. And then he wasn't working well with Blogo, and he didn't get some of his stuff through. There goes Blogo.
Blogo's gone, right?
You know, but still, it's Madigan, you know, basically moving up to a point where he's beat, and then he has a response. So he's definitely beat. It's just, I don't think the Republican Party expected him to have a response at the ready of like, that meant, like, you know, Bruce Rauner threw all of his billions of dollars directly at him.
Yeah.
And Bruce Rauner's gone, you know, like it's that guy's a creep. Madigan, like Blogo is like, I don't know why Durbin was so scared of him. Like, I don't know. I'm starting to be scared of Madigan, and he's like an old dude.
He's creepy. Yeah, if people are watching this, just look him up and you'll see he's this like little wiry man with this derby hat, and the thing about him is that he doesn't have like global aspirations. He truly, like we were talking about last time, he truly just likes the power to be able to have his hand in all these decisions. He's never been, and Blago talked about that. He's like, yeah, Madigan doesn't have Washington aspirations, whereas some of the other politicians obviously in the state do. I would even say that like the mayor, she might have greater aspirations than just mayor of Chicago, I would say. You could say that for all kinds of Kim Fox, you know, a lot of these politicians, but that old machine Democrat style way of politicking is very it's very unique. In a weird way, I think I won't be sad because he creeps me out, but a little like, you know, I wonder what's going to come next. Like after that, the people of Illinois have been stuck dealing with this for decades. Yeah. I wonder what's next. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, you know, like Madigan didn't invent something new. He kept a machine that was already built, and he kept it oiled, and he kept it running, and he kept it hidden, and he kept people from trying to destroy it, you know, from destroying it.
Yeah.
And that's what the Republican Party hated about him. And they have increasingly criminalized different aspects of this machine, and it should be, because it is corruption.
It is.
But I mean, like, you know, that's why Obama, I mean, like I heard this take the other day, and I don't think it's unfair. He's more like a Harry Truman figure, maybe, in the sense that he was you know, he's a president of a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
You know, like Harry Truman's like, why am I the nominee? And then like the party boss was like, well, I want to show the country that, you know, a well-oiled machine can sell a mailboy to the White House.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Obama's more than that, but like, it's also like Madigan had the machinations to do it. So they did it, you know?
Oh, yeah. I think, it was, Blago talked about how Madigan's father was friends with Richard J. Daley. And I would love to talk about him a lot more sometimes, because I mean, he's obviously the ultimate like boss machine politician, and he oversaw a lot of decisions that have led to problems that we still have in Chicago, like today, segregation, all that jazz. But that's for another time. But yeah, Madigan essentially grew up, you know, his father was like given a job at Streets and Sanitation, which is just an example of how machine politics works. Yeah, you get that job. You help your friends out, to say the least. Madigan grew up. That's what he knew. He's a product of his environment. That's what he knew. And
His
just
dad was a precinct captain for Jay Daly. Madigan knew that the Illuminati, the who's who, the real power players, there are people that have power, a lot of power, but they just kind of sit, and enjoy it. And then there were people that were doing something with their power. They were constantly on the move. And that's where Madigan was trying to get at. And they were all at the lakefront clubs, with their tiny ass boats on the lake. So he took up a job there. And then he schmoozed and befriended Jay Daly directly, saying, "Hey, my dad, was totally loyal for you in my neighborhood.
Right. Help me out."
Madigan was always that, working his way up, scaffolding to this machine. He loves this machine. It's everything to him. And the Republicans have called him a communist for it. They call him a socialist for it. They call him a crime boss for it. In some ways, he did kind of create a sustainable model for communism here in America and Chicago, which deserves to be analyzed. But
that's a good.
It's also touches on all of the, as you said, problematic things about Chicago, and God knows what Madigan is privy to, that he's just like, yeah, that's just the way it's got to be.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast. He is, I appreciate this guy. He's a radio host. I appreciate his perspective on things. If I'm gonna, be listening to somebody from the right, I think he ran for governor years ago. His name's Dan Proft, but he was talking to. He's been called every name in the book by the centrist Republicans, but I've looked into it and they twist his words. But I think, I don't know. They all group him with Jeannie Ives and stuff like that, but not important. But he actually had Madigan's right-hand man on his show. It was 30 minutes, and that was interesting. They were arguing the whole time because he just kept trying to ask, Madigan's guy, do you not understand? A lot of these policies are destroying the state. He was like, well, sure, but I don't know if it's just I've never seen for 30 minutes somebody avoid answers. I was stunned that Madigan would even allow that, to go on, for somebody to go on talk radio. I was stunned, but Dan Proft did a good job asking him questions. He's just well, what about this piece of legislation? And he brought up, again, just various pieces of legislation that really impact Chicagoans as far as what they're paying, just everything with the taxes here is just so messed up. And I think that's why I'm so cynical about the Democrat Party, because it's just, to be responsible for the fact that people, with ComEd had to pay 30% more on their bill. It's probably the same for AT&T, installing the smart grid that actually wasn't even doing what it was supposed to do. No, does anybody ever have to answer for that? It's just,
yeah. Madigan, the fact that him and Burke became property tax lawyers, they knew the grift that they were going to play. They knew the power they were going to play. They were always going to play gangster capitalism with Chicago. And but my thing too is that the people that hate Madigan the most tend to be pretty well off people, and Ken Griffin hates Madigan, but it's why? Because he's increasing his property taxes. Right. It's also because he's antagonistic to what Ken Griffin wants, which is my thing. It's the way that Madigan must view the world is that Ken Griffin, Bruce Rowners, those billionaires, they've always owned the world.
Right.
They just manage it. Madigan just manages it for his people, but then he also then starts micromanaging and playing, Burke's a little bit more purposeful about being very eugenicist of how he socially engineers home communities to be politically expedient to him. But Madigan is no angel in that either. It's no accident that our movements in America from the right are coming from the police. They get away with anything. Mm-hmm. And then on the left, that are primarily it's nurses and teachers, primarily really it was initially teachers, and they're the people that get beat up the most. But in Madigan and Burke's neighborhoods where I'm at, it's nothing but cops married to teachers, you know, and that's
Yeah,
not an accident. That's not an accident at all. You know, like Madigan and Burke know exactly what they're socially engineering in their communities they want to live in, their little kingdoms, you know?
yes, yes. And that actually that reminds me just quickly about the redistricting. That's a huge thing, yeah, because that's coming up is the redistricting. And I was reading about Burke how his area, I mean, I don't remember how it was described, but just there's more and more over the years, like more Latino communities in. So he's just like redistricting as much as he can to get the people that he thinks will vote for him. But that's also then goes back to then like you were talking about the war between like Garcia, like others. So it's just these two guys, they just yeah, they're socially engineering everything. They've engineered so much, and I don't yeah, it's because what I'm worried about now with the coming months in Chicago, as far as like our economic situation's not great. For some people, it's been not great, obviously, for decades. Like, I really just want to know what's going to happen. And I think that like somebody like Madigan or Burke, they're so far removed from like the actual struggles that people have every day. And what kills me is that so many people continue to vote for them. I'm not saying vote for the Republican either, but just like demand, like people deserve better. Illinoisans just deserve so much better government and just never talked about. Like,
yeah. For 2019, I mean, like I was, you mentioned like the Pilsen landmark, and we'll talk about that at some other point, or we could touch on it today. But like, I was kind of all over the place. But one of my fixations was at Burke because he is the most powerful alderman in the city of Chicago, and it was my neighborhood. It was like right there. I was pretty distracted from all over the city, but I had to focus a little bit on Ed Burke during 2019 because as we said, I mean, like, look at how far back his entrenched hold on power was. And what I wanted was just to soften that a little bit for entryism. There were, and Burke was hot for that year, like he poor John Arena was a decent man, is a good man. He was a good alderman. He brought affordable housing to his Northwest Side neighborhoods. It was a cop neighborhood, and people lost their crap. Like, power to all of the leftists and socialist and progressive aldermen out there that try to stop a budget earlier. But like, John Arena was a progressive and an extremely right-wing cop neighborhood. And,
that's impressive.
And Burke had it out for him. The cops had it out for him. 2019, he was one of the casualties that he lost his seat. And that's kind of how Burke plays things bit by bit. And I knew that. Like, I just wanted him distracted enough. And I think, that year was a shock to him. Like, he got indicted from his conversation with Solis. He had he had 3 challengers.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more action than he anticipated.
Oh yeah.
Seats got flipped. He didn't like that, and Madigan was already making his play with Chuy Garcia, and beating down Burke. But I think that ultimately Burke, being a cop first and foremost, I think that he will be the guy that eventually nails down Madigan.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with you on that. I think he will be too, because I don't think I think the last name's Mclean, one of the people that's indicted, who's like Madigan's closest. Blogo was talking about this. He's like, I don't think he might at the very end, but I think it will be Burke too, because all of these people are obsessed with their legacies as well, which, I guess I get it. I kind of think that's more of a generational thing. Honestly, that's just me. Maybe I just put it out for the boomers, even though neither of them I think are even boomers. I don't know. They're older, but
they're older.
Yeah. They want their legacy to be, I don't know. I would love to just pick all of their brains, frankly, but Blago the most, for sure.
Yeah. We're gonna wrap this up, but Blogo, I know that he's doing cameos out there. and I see kind of what he's doing, and I have to be perfectly honest that like I'm rooting for the guy a little bit. Like,
Right, I know.
he was a neighborhood guy. He married into power. He was very ambitious. He worked hard. He's from Illinois. He got caught up, did his time, and then he's got a family. He's got kids. They want to raise a family here, so he's trying to normalize himself out there, and he's got a ton of insight into everything that's been going on here and why the world is the way all messed up.
Why it is the way it is. Exactly. Yeah. I agree. I'm kind of rooting for him too. I don't agree with him, but you know what? Well, no, I'm rooting for him pretty much. So yeah, that would be, he's out there getting cameos, like you said. I know that he's making little appearances on, I think it's Newsmax TV, because that's blown up. Because now Fox is, the right doesn't like Fox anymore.
Yeah, they're making space for, Fox is trying to save their worldwide news network credibility. Sure. And they have one American news network. Of like, all right, like we'll catch you guys on the other end. You know that if a new network is going to bring up under our watch, you need our permission. We'll work that out.
Exactly.
I mean, like Blogo by no means is a perfect human being, but the insights that he can share with our generation definitely would be very valuable. And I hope he either does a podcast on Burke sometime soon, or we've talked about you taking over the show. If he wants to come on, and be interviewed here or with Kit, or would be nice to have his voice in Illinois politics, if only to keep shaking things up.
Exactly. I will close, actually, with this, because that's a great point you bring up, like for younger people to kind of understand that are maybe like completely disengaged. I'm not saying that, a podcast is going to make them want to be involved in politics. However, I would say this to Blogo, as you continue to improve your reputation, what a great way to really, really do that, then kind of give as much insight as you can so that people in the future know why Illinois is the way it is, a lot of why Washington is the way it is, and help that way. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, this has been another late night episode of Fear and Loathing in the Windy City. Thanks, Allie, for bringing up Blogo's podcast. I wouldn't have caught it otherwise.
That's a good one.
Show notes are down in the description. Please check out all the articles that were referenced in the conversation today, and we'll hopefully catch you again next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.